Esav felt bad for Yaakov. He was limping, was coming to the ram, and he kissed him, and then they say, well, it wasn't really a real kiss. It was a temporary kiss. That was what happened in 1948, guys. We were coming back to the land of Israel. We were limping from the Holocaust. And the Western world said, okay, we'll give you a kiss. When Israel was established in 1948, the United Nations was willing to give like a stamp of approval. Why did they give a stamp of approval? Because it felt bad. After the Holocaust, the Jews got destroyed. We might as well give them this little sliver of a refugee state on the coast around Tel Aviv, and not even Jaffa, but Tel Aviv and Haifa and places like that. We can give them a little refugee state, and we feel bad for them, but we'll hug them. Kind of like the way that Yaakov, when he came out of the exile, in Aram, he came and the first thing he met before he went into the land of Israel, who was it that he met? Who? Esav, the angel of Esav. And he battled with the angel of Esav. Esav, in our tradition, represents like the Western world, right? He battles with Esav, and when he finishes the battle, what happens in that battle when he fights the angel of Esav? What happens to Yaakov? He comes out? He comes out Esau, but also what does he come out? He's able to walk away safely. What is he? He's limping. And he's limping, and when Yaakov comes into the land of Israel and he meets Esav for real, what happens? They hug him. Esav gives him a hug and a kiss, right? In other words, and what does it say? What does Rashi say there? That Esav felt bad for Yaakov. Esav felt bad for Yaakov. He was limping, was coming to the ram, and he kissed him. And when you see the word kiss in the Torah, it has like little dots on them, right? And then they say it wasn't really a real kiss; it was a temporary kiss. That was what happened in 1948, guys. The Jewish people was limping. We were coming back to the land of Israel. We were limping from the Holocaust, and the Western world said, "Okay, we'll give you a kiss. You can have your refugee state within the borders of the United Nations partition plan, which was 1947 partition plan, and so forth." And that was okay. But what happened in 1967, I want you to understand, and this is very important. What happened in 1967 that Israel can't talk about today was something that rocked the foundations of the Western world. Because this wasn't any longer a refugee people that were giving them a little space to live in. All of a sudden, in 1967, we had a biblical scale event in the heart of the 20th century. Little David destroys all the armies around him in a number of days, comes back to Judea, comes back to Samaria, comes back to Hebron, to Yericho, the Golan Heights, to the Sinai, to Yerushalayim, to the Temple Mount, against all odds. And now all of a sudden the Western world has to ask itself a question. The Western world, which is an inheritor of the Christian world, in the Christian world, the Jews were considered to be what? The pariah. They rejected Jesus, and so they're not in the stage of history anymore. They're on the side of history. What happened in 1967 was that the Jewish people came back onto the stage of history the way that the Jewish people had been telling ourselves that it was going to happen for 2,000 years. I'm not speaking from a religious perspective. What I'm speaking from right now is a sociological perspective, a psychological perspective, the collective subconscious of the Western world. Because no matter where you grew up in the Western world, you've heard of the Jews. Whether you bet them or not. They're part of your mythology. Like if I say Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Why do you know the Seven Dwarfs? Because it's part of the stories you tell yourself all the time. And the same thing with the Jewish people. There's a story that the Western world, through Christianity, even through secularism, which is Western secularism is a rejection of Christianity, but they've heard these stories. What's the story? That they have the Bible. You go anywhere, in any hotel in Louisiana, you open up the shelf. What does it have there? The Bible. What does it say there in the prophets? It says one day the Jewish people are going to come back from exile and come back to Jerusalem and reestablish their sovereignty. And that story is connected to something else very important. I want you to listen. I really will try to make this quick. The return of the Jewish people is what's called like the Messianic dream. Is connected to a change in all of the world. You say? Like Yeshayahu, the prophet. There will be no more wars. There's a universal message that comes out from Yerushalayim. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah u'dvar Hashem Yerushalayim. What is that? From Jerusalem, we say it every day. There's going to be a word, some message that's going to come out of Jerusalem. Some message that's going to come out of Jerusalem to who? Not to the Jewish people. To who? To the nations of the world. And all the nations of the world that are the inheritors of the West, they have this story in their head. The Jewish people, when they come back, this is connected to a change in all of world history. It's not a religious idea. I'm just telling you the myth. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Jews come back from exile to Jerusalem. What's the next step? A message is supposed to come out to the world from Yerushalayim.